Okay, guys, this is Doug Jones in beautiful Bend, Oregon, and tonight's topic is time management and goal achievement. And if I can find my controls here, we will get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is why would you care about goals or time management, right? The reason why is because we have a business here that's very much worthy of our energy because of all the money we can make. I've never seen a more lucrative business opportunity, but it's more than that. It's a cause worthy of our passion. So Vollara is not only, as I said, a business worthy of our energy because of the money you can make, but getting this active, pure technology into every business, every school, every church, every home in North America is also a cause very much worthy of our passion because of the difference we can make. With widespread use of this technology, we can crush this pandemic, and guys, we can prevent the next ones. If this was in all of the places where humans, go indoors before COVID came around, it wouldn't have been a problem, and we wouldn't have had to shut down the whole country. So we have it within our ability to change that in the future, to first of all get rid of this pandemic and restore our freedom, but also to eliminate the need for having to do these draconian measures in the future. So we're making a difference in the battle against the virus and against the lockdowns, and I want to be part of that story. I hope you do too. But also I want to profit from the massive growth that's going on. Guys, between February and March of 2021, I don't know when you're going to be listening to this on the recording, but February was a great month. It was a record month for sales in Vollara. In March, we doubled February, doubled it in 1 month. Guys, that is what we call massive growth, and it's happening right now. So you probably want to profit from that, right? And so if you want to do that, you're going to need to get more done in less time, especially if you're part-time. If you're part-time, you need to, give your full-time attention to your full-time job, but you need to really be effective in the time you have available for this business. So let's talk about a very cool way to make that happen. That's what this training is about. If you don't have a book called The 12-Week Year, order it today. This book will transform the results in your life. So, a word to the wise, get the book. Audio form is okay. I would highly recommend getting the printed version so you can mark it up. That's what I do. So the 12-week year is actually a system that helps you operate at your best each day. In other words, sometimes we have down days, right? Well, in the 12-week year, you don't have time for down days. So it helps you to operate at your best each day by creating clarity and focus on what matters most that day and a sense of urgency to do it now. The system is designed to enable us to get 12 months worth of results in just 12 weeks. The book is a perennial bestseller. The 12-week year system is used by thousands of successful organizations worldwide, most of the S&P 500. Mike Jackson, who's our master distributor here at Vollara, does a 12-week year training and support group that meets every Saturday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. And the details are in the weekly schedule that's in the Tools for Tour Guides document. And I send that Tools for Tour Guides out often, and I update it often. So each time you get it, I would highly recommend you taking the one you just got and replacing the one that's in your files already, because that is a dynamic document that continues to grow. So the 12-week year has 8 key elements that you'll learn about when you read the book that are fundamental to high performance in any endeavor. It doesn't matter what you're trying to accomplish. These are 8 elements that are essential to that success. First of all, is you have to have a crystal clear vision of what it is you want to accomplish, because that's what will, that vision of what you want to accomplish and why it's important to you is what's going to drive you to do what you don't feel like doing when you don't feel like doing it, but you need to do, right? And so, that's why most people don't get much done, is because when they don't feel like doing something, they just don't do it. Well, if you have a vision that's driving you, you'll do it whether you feel like it or not. Feelings won't matter. So vision is incredibly important. It's foundational to success. And we're going to do a whole training series on how to really clarify your vision of what you want to accomplish in your life in all areas, not just business. Second is planning. It's great to have a vision and a goal, but without a plan, a goal is just a wish, right? So you have to have a specific written goal, and then you have to have a plan to achieve it. Once you know where you want to go, you can reverse engineer how do you get there from where you are today, right? Here's where I want to go. Here's where I am today. So you have to back up one day at a time from the goal to figure out what you have to do tomorrow to make some progress toward that goal. That's what planning is about. Process control is about the things that have to happen in that plan, right? And measurement is ultra important. If you're not measuring your activity, how can you possibly know if you're doing enough, right? Or what the results are. So measurement is critical, and I have a great chapter on measurement in this book. Time use is what we're going to talk about today, because time use is really the only thing we have total control over. And accountability, without accountability, probably you're not going to achieve as much as you will with accountability. Commitment is foundational to any endeavor, and greatness in the moment. In other words, you don't have to be great all the time. You have to be great when you need to be great, right? I think Michael Jordan was a great example of that. You know, he was pretty good all the time, but he was great when he needed to be great, right? Especially in the last 2 minutes. So tonight we're going to focus on the time use aspect of this. And the truth is, as Jim Rohn said, either you run the day or the day runs you. So if you want to take back control of your day, then you need to proactively do that. And so David Allen, who's an efficiency expert, says you can't manage time. And that makes sense, right? Time is just going to pass, right, regardless of what you do. So you actually only manage what you do during time. So the management issue is not so much about time. It's much more about how you manage your own focus. How do you manage your actions and your activities in terms of what you do? Doesn't that make sense? And so basically it comes down to choices, guys. The choices you make about how you spend your time ultimately will create the results in your life. Choices have consequences, and those consequences are called results. So you want to choose wisely. So I want to introduce to you Paul J. Meyer. Hopefully you've at least heard the name. If not, then I highly recommend you look him up on Wikipedia. He's an amazing guy, definitely worth looking up so you get his whole story. But he's best known as the founder of the Success Motivation Institute. But before he did that, he was hired to manage a little tiny insurance brokerage in Orlando, Florida. That was before Disney World, when Orlando was a swamp, and insurance agents were typically 5 or 6 agencies were typically 5 or 6 agents. He was eventually sued by many of the larger agencies in Florida, the national companies, for pirating their agents. But he wasn't doing that. They came to him. He didn't go after them. And his agency eventually grew to over 2,000 agents. Back in an era when a big agency was 5 or 6, it was one of the largest in the country. And the reason that all those agents came to Paul J. Meyer is because he helped his agents make more money than they'd ever made in their lives. That makes sense that they'd want to go work for him, right? So by the time he left, everyone, I mean 100% of the people who'd been with him at least 2 years were making 6 figures. And guys, this is back in the 1960s when 6 figures was really a lot of money. So if you would like to help a lot of families and earn a lot of money in any business, I don't care whether it's insurance or Vollara or anything else, don't you think it might be important to know what he taught those insurance guys? And by the way, he worked with several of the same guys who were there when he started, right? And they were just mediocre, and they became superstars. So what changed? The only thing that changed was 2 things. He taught them only 2 things. When he came, they were teaching all these agents all the intricacies of life insurance. He fired the trainer that was teaching them about life insurance, hired the best insurance expert in the country from Wharton School, I believe, Wharton Business School, and had that guy available on call. So if those guys had an insurance question, they would call the expert. But the only thing he talked to them about every week, was goal setting and time management. So the first thing he taught them was goal setting, mastering the art of visioning what you want to accomplish and clearly knowing why your goals are important to you. Because if you have a clear vision and a burning desire, why that causes you to do what you need to do, whether you feel like doing it or not, that's the first step. Second step is to use your time effectively. So he taught them time management skills, and that's what we're going to talk about on this call, how to take back control of your day. So if you get those 2 pieces right, Vollara is a vehicle that can allow anybody to make any level of income you want, at least up to the 7 or maybe even 8-figure range, because this compensation plan pays incredibly well, and we have the hottest product on the planet. So we know that because Vollara has already produced 7-figure earners, and that was before the 24/7 news cycle started doing their $1 trillion worth of advertising for us for free, right, to drive customers toward our amazing Active Pure products. Guys, Vollara was doing very well prior to December 14th, but when that press release came out that said that our product eliminates 99.9% of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the one that causes COVID-19 symptoms, that was when this thing began to explode. and it is exploding to this day. I don't care when you're listening to this, I promise you it's still going to be exploding. So we should be able to accomplish those same levels, 6, 7 figures faster than it was done before because our timing is right. We're right in the middle of a huge demand for our product, right? But to do that, we have to be good at managing our time. Successful people do now what others won't so that they can live later like others can't. That's just the bottom line. And I suspect that, like me, many of you agree with that, but it's much easier to say that than to do it, isn't it? So the 12-week year gives us a system for doing now what others won't. That's really what it's about, is a system for getting things done, whether you feel like it or not, when they need to be done in prioritized order. So I highly recommend that you read that book, 12-week year, and join Mike Jackson's next 13-week year, which will be coming right up. So get the book tonight, read it this coming weekend, and just understand what it's about so you can jump into Mike's next group, which will probably start a week from Saturday or 2 weeks from Saturday. By the way, this is, when I say that, I'm speaking now in March of 2021. So if you're listening at a different time, then check on when those are starting. So I'm going to join the next one. I hope you will too. The 12-week year is based in part on very foundational principles from a book that should be in every entrepreneur's library. This is my second book recommendation of the night. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was written by Stephen Covey in the 1980s. I read it then. I've read it maybe 10 times since. And the time management chapter in the 12-week year does a good job of describing the importance of weekly planning in the context of your business and describing the importance of using time blocks. And it gives a little bit of lip service to life balance. But the 7 Habits is much more detailed in that regard and with regard to the other things that are important in your life besides business. And so I'm using the time planning concepts from the 7 Habits book, and then I'll tie that back to the 12-week year as it applies to our weekly business plan. But you want to have a plan for all of your life, not just your business. So we're going to use the 7 Habits for that. So guys, this life that we have here is not a practice session. I'm 72. I can tell you it's the only life we have. And the older you get, the more you recognize that. So you want to maximize the value of the time that we have, because there's no guarantee even that we'll have tomorrow. So you want to take advantage of the opportunities in front of you today. So to make the most of it, we need to be in balance in our whole life, which means getting our priorities done in all the important areas of our life, not just business. But how do you maintain life balance when you have too much to do and not enough time to get it all done? Isn't that the challenge? Do you ever feel like this guy? Like you're running hard but getting nowhere? So the information I'm going to share here comes from Habit 3 in the 7 Habits, putting first things first. Sounds logical, doesn't it? It's about managing what we do with the time that we have because we can't manage time. All we can do is manage what we do with the time we have. So everybody has 24 hours a day, but some people get a lot more done that's important in those 24 hours than others. I think you'd agree with that, right? So that's because some people have learned to be more effective at personal leadership and personal management. What most often keeps you from being exceptional, it says in the 12-week year, is not a lack of time, but the way you allocate the time you have. So habit 3, put first things first, says that effective personal leadership is deciding what the first things are. In other words, deciding what your priorities are. And then effective personal management puts them first, day by day and moment by moment. Personal management is discipline. It's a function of your independent will. You have to will yourself to do it because a lot of times you will not feel like it. So feelings have nothing to do with success. Execution has everything to do with success. So the problem is that sometimes we have the will and sometimes we don't. So the structure and accountability in the 12-week year process solves that problem. So as I said earlier, life is a series of choices, and choices have consequences. We're responsible for the choices we make, and we will reap the full consequences of our choices, whether they're good or bad. And the bad news is not choosing is by itself a choice. So Covey has identified 4 different kinds of activities that we can choose to do or not do. They fall into the 4 quadrants of time management. This, guys, is the brilliant concept of this book. It is just phenomenal once you get your arms around this. So there's really only 4 things that you can do with time. Things that are urgent or not urgent, and things that are important or not important. So there's then 4 quadrants. On the top y-axis, we have urgent and not urgent. On the x-axis, we have not important and important. So things that are in quadrant 1 are important and urgent. Things that are in quadrant 2 are important but not urgent. And things in quadrant 3 are not important but seem urgent. And things that are in quadrant 4 are not urgent and not important. So what do those things look like? So things that are urgent and important are crises, right? Pressing problems, firefighting, major scrap and rework projects, and deadline-driven projects that have to be done by a certain time. Those are all urgent and important. In category 2, the things that are important but not urgent are things like preventing crises, right? Production capacity activities, in other words, increasing your production capacity, relationship building, exploring new opportunities, planning, and recreation. And I put that hyphen in there, and it's important because recreation, relaxing, having fun, is how you regenerate creation. That's where the word comes from. So recreation is important. You can't just work all the time. You will burn out. So those things are not urgent, but they are important. So what's urgent but not important? This is where we probably waste a lot of time during a business day. Interruptions, some calls, some mail, almost all email, some reports, some meetings, proximate pressing matters, popular activities, and some scrap and rework. And in the not urgent, not important is trivia, busy work, some mail, most email, some phone calls, time-wasting people, and pleasant activities. In other words, things that you may use to de-stress. There's better ways to de-stress than wasting time. So those are the 4 quadrants. Those are the things that happen in those 4 quadrants. So in the things that are important but not urgent, they require initiative, creativity, and proactivity to make them happen. Quadrant 2 is the heart of effective personal management. It's the things that don't feel urgent but are very important. Things like building relationships, creating a personal mission statement, reviewing that mission statement, planning, resting, evaluating and adjusting, and exploring new opportunities. Those are all really important things. And I would add to that maintaining relationships, right? You don't want to sacrifice your time with your family completely to build a business for them because you'll lose them in the course of working for them, right? It makes no sense. So you have to have balance in your life. This will give you that balance. Quadrant 2 is about being ahead of your schedule rather than trying desperately to catch up with your schedule. Oops. Uh-oh. Hang on, guys. My controls just disappeared. Here we go. Okay. Okay, there we go. So quadrant 2 is at the heart of personal effective management. It's things that don't feel urgent but are very important, like, as I said, building relationships, creating your personal mission statement, planning, resting, evaluating and adjusting, and exploring new opportunities. Guys, the reason that the military works so well, I was a Navy pilot, the reason the military is one of the few things in government that works well is because we not only spent probably an hour pre-briefing every mission, but we spent 2 hours debriefing it, evaluating so we could adjust what we did next time to get better. And we did that every single time. So if you evaluate and adjust, whether you're making calls or coaching people or whatever, if you evaluate and adjust after each session, you're going to get better. You can't help it. So quadrant 2 is about being ahead of your schedule rather than trying to desperately catch up with your schedule. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So urgent is different from important. Urgent matters are usually visible. They press on us. They insist on our action, but they're often popular with others, and they want us to do those urgent things. And they're often pleasant, and some are easy, but they're often not important. So, you have to learn to distinguish between urgent and important. Importance has to do with results. When something's important, it contributes to your values, your mission, and your high priority goals. Effective people stay out of quadrants 3 and 4 because urgent or not, they're not important. Urgent or not, they're not important. Peter Drucker was a leading business author of the 1980s, and Drucker said, effective people are opportunity-minded, they are not problem-minded. They feed opportunities and starve problems because they think preventatively. He didn't mean that they don't have quadrant 1 crises and emergencies that require immediate attention. Rather, they have less of them because they're anticipating them and dealing with them before they become a crisis. So once again, here's your 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is urgent and important. That's your crises and things that got out of hand and have to be done now. The quadrant 2 is not urgent but important. That's planning, so you don't have those crises, and expanding your capacity by learning more and becoming better. Quadrant 3 is urgent but not important. That's things usually that other people think are urgent but are not in terms of results. And then quadrant 4 is things that are neither urgent nor important. So in quadrant 1, you can minimize quadrant 1 activities by planning. In other words, you have less urgencies if you plan ahead and get things done before they become crises. In quadrant 3, you want to delegate as much of that stuff as possible, because it's urgent to somebody, it's not to you in terms of your priorities. Quadrant 4, you want to avoid completely. In quadrant 2, you want to maximize, because quadrant 2 is where progress comes from. So there's 2 important questions, guys, and I want you to think about this. I'm going to give you some time. At the beginning of First Things First chapter, Covey asked these 2 profound questions. I'd like you to write these down. So grab something to write with right now. Give me a minute while I have a drink of water. So if you've got something to write with, I want you to think about these 2 questions this week. And then next week, I'm going to do another training that will take this down a step further. But write these 2 questions down now. These are 2 really important questions if you want to gain control of your effectiveness. Here's question number 1. And write this down. What one thing that I'm not doing now, if I did it on a consistent basis, could make a tremendous positive difference in my personal life? This has nothing to do with business. What one thing that I'm not doing now, if I did it on a consistent daily basis or weekly basis, every week, every day, could make a tremendous positive difference in my personal life? Think of one thing. You don't have to think of it this second. Just write the question down and ponder that this week. Give it some thought. Question 2 is kind of the same thing. What one thing could you do that you're not doing now in your business that if you did it on a consistent basis could make a tremendous positive difference in your business results? Aren't those great questions? The reason I like to do these trainings every once in a while is that they remind me I should be doing this stuff, right? So these are 2 questions that are worth giving some thought to. And as you think about those 2 things, what quadrant do you think they fit in? The things that are going to be on that list. Chances are about 100% they fit into quadrant 2, which is important, but not urgent. In fact, just writing them down and thinking about the answers to those questions is important, but not urgent. So how do we get more time for quadrant 2 activities? That's an important question because all of us, in my experience, are pretty much overbooked, overstressed, and overcommitted. I certainly feel that way most of the time, don't you? Isn't that kind of how everybody feels? I think so. And so you can't ignore the things in quadrant 1 that are urgent and important, the crises and emergencies that just happen as part of life. But those things will shrink in size and number as you spend more time in quadrant 2, especially in planning and preparation. Because if you're planning ahead, then these things don't become last-minute crises. So initially, the only place you're going to find more time for quadrant 2 activities is from quadrant 3 and quadrant 4, things that are not important. That just makes sense, doesn't it? You can't avoid the things that are urgent and important, but we can spend less time in quadrants 3 and 4 doing things that are not important. And that's the things that usually seem urgent, but they're not important, and things that are not urgent and not important at all. So you want to be aware as you're doing things throughout your day, be aware of which quadrant that activity fits into. That means that to make time for quadrant 2 activities, we need to learn to say no to other activities. Learn to say no. That includes quadrant 3 activities that seem urgent but are not important, and quadrant 4 activities that are stress relieving and fun but are neither urgent nor important. So the bottom line is that successful, effective people do now what others won't, so they can live later like others can't. But they have a system for doing that, and that's what makes them successful and effective. It's easy to say, but much harder to do. The 12-week year provides you a system for doing that. So we can either do that because we have an iron self-discipline, which I do not, and most of you probably don't either, or because we're driven by a crystal clear vision of our goals that we want to achieve, and most importantly, why these goals are important. Having goals that you want to achieve means nothing if the why behind them doesn't drive you to do what you need to do, whether you feel like doing it or not. So the why is really the critical driver. So once we're clear on the why of our vision, we'll be clear on why these quadrant 2 activities are important to us, right? Because we'll know that they're moving us toward our ultimate vision. That's why Paul J. Meyer taught visualization and goal setting, because without a burning why, most of us will not have the discipline to follow the system and do the things others won't do. So we're entrepreneurs because we want to take back control of our time. And so we can enjoy the success that we create in the process of creating it, right? But it's not about piling up a lot of money like Scrooge McDuck so we can swim in a money bin. It's about creating the financial freedom so that we can enjoy the success we create because we also have time freedom. So it's not about making money. It's about having balance and having a system that produces the money we need to have financial freedom in order to do the things we want to do with our families and with our significant others, and making a difference for others with the financial and time freedom that we create for ourselves. Doesn't that kind of define it for most people? So how could we put more time into quadrant 2 and not sacrifice the things that are actually so important in our lives and more important in our lives than work? And how can we have life balance and still get it all done? And by the way, this isn't just about work. It's about every aspect of your life. Unfortunately, Covey doesn't leave us hanging on this question of balance. He introduces a tool, which is a quadrant 2 organizer that meets 6 very important criteria. So guys, don't drift away here. Pay attention to this. This will set you free. So here are the important criteria that this quadrant 2 organizer has to meet. It has to meet congruity, life balance, quadrant 2 focus, a people dimension. It has to be flexible, and it has to have accessibility. So it's a tall order, but fortunately Covey in the 12-week year together provide the solution. So the solution is weekly planning. Most time management tools fail because they focus on daily planning, but most people think in terms of weeks. Daily planning tools basically only help you organize crises and busy work. The key is not to schedule your priorities, but to prioritize your schedule. And that can best be done in the context of a week. So a day is too short. It's impossible to accomplish much if you try to stay in balance every single day. A month is too long because you lose focus and momentum if too much time goes by without paying attention to the important roles that we have in our daily lives. And so a week is just about right. So when I discovered this tool that Covey had for managing activities within the week, it actually felt like a huge weight was coming off my back, because it's a wonderful tool for helping us do those things that others won't so we can live later like others can't, but also to keep our life in balance while we win. In other words, to be there with your family for the important events, to have that weekly date night, to do all the things that are important in your relationships outside of work and still win at work. And it's so simple. You got to see this. Guys, when I came out of this training seminar, when I learned this, I was laughing. I felt like I was floating on a cloud. It was such a great experience. It's called weekly roles and goals. Roles and goals planning is a once-a-week process. You do it every week, and it should be part of your weekly planning that happens in the 12-week year system. For me personally, I find that I need to do it at the end of the day on Friday, because if I wait until Saturday or Sunday, it just doesn't happen. So if anyone ever besides me felt guilty because you're so focused in one role in your life, let's say your professional role, that you neglected another important role, like your role as a husband, a father, a wife, or mother, or the reverse. You take time off to be an important family event, and you feel guilty because you're not getting something done at work. I think that happens to all of us. It certainly happened to me all the time when I owned a mortgage company. I had a lot of things to get done, but it happens to everybody all the time. You feel guilty, and it's not a great feeling. So how would you like to never feel guilty again because you're getting all the important things done in every area of your life? Would that be good? I'll tell you, for me, it was wonderful. So weekly roles and goals planning can take that guilt away forever. Quadrant 2 organizing and planning involves 4 key steps. Step 1, identify the key roles that you play in your life. One role is maybe husband. Another role may be father. Another role may be business owner, right? And another role might be follower of Jesus Christ. Those are all different roles that you play in your life, and one role always needs to be personal, right? That's going to be the things that you do for maintaining, physically and mentally yourself, right? So step 2 is identify the 3 most important tasks to accomplish in each one of those roles during the course of the coming week. So you're going to have a maximum, I'll come to this in a minute, but you're going to have a maximum of 7 roles and a maximum of 3 important tasks for each role. The most important, right? There may be 4 or 5 important tasks, but you pick the 3 most important. And then you use time blocking, and I'll get around to that in just a second. And then daily adapting. You've got to be adaptable. In other words, things have to be a little bit flexible. So step 1 is identify the key roles that you play in your life, the important ones, and you want to have 7 of the most important roles you play. If you have more, then you have to combine them. You can't have more than 7. So, for example, my roles include follower of Jesus Christ, husband, a team leader in this company, producing life agent, which is what I used to do. This is an old slide. Member of the community, right? My community responsibilities, health and fitness for me personally, and personal development. Each of these are different roles that I play at some point every week. Others not so often, like my role as grandfather, right? As a grandfather, I'm probably a once a month kind of guy. But when we have more than 7 to consolidate, we have to consolidate 2 of the others because we need to have a maximum here of 7 roles, guys. And those roles need to be in place in your schedule, and your weekly scheduling is a solution to that. So step 2, for each of the roles you've identified, identify 3, not 4, not 2, but the 3 most important things to accomplish in each role that week. And if there's 4, you have to decide which one gets pushed to next week. The next step is to identify the 3 most important tasks that I need to accomplish in each of those roles for the coming week that take 2 hours or less. So if one of these tasks takes more than 2 hours, I have to break it down into smaller tasks. So your maximum time block is going to be 2 hours. So we have a maximum of 7 roles, a maximum of 3 important tasks per role that don't take any more than 2 hours. And so we have a maximum of 21 tasks that need to be scheduled into your week first, and you do that by time blocking. So Covey calls these goals, but they're really more like tasks because they're activities that can be accomplished in 1 to 2 hours or less. So if one of these tasks seems like it might take more than an hour, then break it down into multiple tasks. So time blocking is how you do that. The third step is called time blocking, and this is where the magic comes in. If you'll get this right, time blocking, then you'll make huge progress in both your business and in the rest of your life. Time blocking is nothing more than creating non-negotiable appointments with yourself. Write that down. Create non-negotiable appointments with yourself. That means they're inviolate. You can't change them. It's about getting those 21 most important tasks physically into your calendar with time blocks, just like a dentist appointment, every week. And the 12-week year adds some great ideas on how to do this time blocking. So definitely read that book on the time management section. So time management is exactly like a dentist appointment in the time blocking sense, in that if you have a dentist appointment, you schedule from 2 to 3:30 to be at the dentist, you block that time off in your calendar physically. You actually pencil it out, right? That's called a time block. And what happens if you have to change an appointment with the dentist? First of all, you don't change it easily, do you? If it's blocking your calendar, you look at it, and if somebody wants you to do something at that time, you say, I'm sorry, I have an appointment at that time. Isn't that right? Isn't that what you do? But if you do have to change it because there's a major emergency that comes up, don't you call the dentist's office and reschedule that appointment? Of course. And then you move that time block, you just get the eraser out, erase it, but you put the time block in a new place in your calendar, right? I mean, that's familiar to all of us, right? It's so critical that we actually write our 21 most important tasks for the week into the calendars in these blocks, just like a dentist appointment. And just like a dentist appointment, if a true emergency comes up that requires that appointment be changed, we reschedule it for another time and put that new time blocked into our calendar as a time block. That's the only way, guys, you'll preserve that time for that important task and get it done. If you don't do that and something comes up and you blow off that task for the day, you'll never get that time back. Without doing this, you will simply lose that time, and that's why most people are not very effective. So if we'll treat our important roles in our life with the same degree of respect as you treat a dentist appointment, don't change those appointments unless it's really important. And when you do have to change it, move the time block so you still get it done. If we do that, then we'll get the quadrant 2 activities done. If not, we won't, because you'll never regain that time, never. So once time blocks are set in your calendar for the 3 most important tasks for each of your 7 most important roles, I guarantee your stress level will go down a lot right at that point, as soon as you see it in your calendar. because you know that all the bases are getting covered. And that guilt that we talked about earlier will go away, because when you have all of your important bases covered for the week, there's no guilt, right? You're getting it all done. So daily adapting comes into play as you execute on this. This is where effectiveness takes over from efficiency. Effectiveness is more important than efficiency. Quadrant 2 organizing is not all about efficiency. It's about effectiveness. So what's so cool about the weekly roles and goals organizing system is it does allow us that flexibility. So remember, these time blocks are there. They can be moved if they really need to be. But putting those time blocks in the calendar as appointments and thinking of them as appointments, you'll be able to very comfortably say, I'm sorry, I have an appointment at that time. When else can we do that? When somebody asks you for some time. So if you have non-negotiable appointments with ourselves, you'll get these tasks done. So that's the key, guys. Non-negotiable appointments blocked off in your calendar, and treat them like appointments. So if an emergency comes up that forces us to do something else during that time, we simply do what we do with a dentist appointment. We move that block of time in our calendar. And if you'll do that, you'll get quadrant 2 with a lot more of your time. You'll spend more of your time in quadrant 2 than you're currently spending there. Most of us are spending no time in quadrant 2. So you'll also immediately identify a lot of email and other time wasters and figure out ways to delegate or just get rid of those, right? So moving into quadrant 2, it's by moving into quadrant 2 using the weekly roles and goals that will allow us to accomplish so much more, not just in our business, but also in our personal relationships. Our lives will be better, and our personal development will be stronger. Our exercise regimen, every aspect of our lives will be better, and we will feel better about ourselves if we do this. The question is, do we have the will to do it, right? So I highly recommend you also get this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. First Things First is just one of the 7 great concepts that Covey explains in great detail. In my mind, it's a must-read for anybody who wants to be effective in business and life. Reading is a quadrant 2 activity. Block off the time to do that. So Benjamin Franklin says, "Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that's the stuff life is made of." Wow. And when I saw that, I went, oh, hey, he's right. So if you're not in control of your time, guys, you're not in control of your results. And the choices you make about how you spend your time ultimately create the results of your life. So the choices you make about how you spend your time ultimately create the results in your life. So as the Knight Templar told Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, you must choose, but choose wisely. Have a great evening, guys.